And Hezekiah showed these men from Babylon all of the treasures there in the house of God. And so Isaiah came to Hezekiah and he said, who were these men that were here? And he said, oh, they're emissaries from a country that's far away, a place called Babylon. And he said, what did they want? And he said, well, they just wanted to tell me that they were glad that I recovered from my illness. And he said, what did you show them? He said, I showed them all of the treasures in the house of God. And Isaiah became angry, and he prophesied that these Babylons would come back, and they will carry away all of that treasure to Babylon, and they'll take the young men and the princes and carry them away captives. 105 years later it happened. Nebuchadnezzar came, and as the scripture here records, he carried away the treasures from the house of God to put in the house of his God in Babylon. And then he ordered that they bring some of these fine young men of the princes and all from Israel in order that they might groom them to stand in the Babylonian court. And so they had chosen children in whom was no blemish, but well-favored, good-looking, skillful in all wisdom, cunning in knowledge and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. So they took the cream of the young men, and they carried them away to Babylon to teach them the Chaldean language, in order that they might stand in the court of Nebuchadnezzar as an advisor and as a counselors to Nebuchadnezzar. So the king appointed unto them the daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank. And so he nourished them for 3 years, that at the end thereof he might bring them before the king. The idea was, of course, 3 years of training, learning the Chaldean language, learning the customs of the court and all, in order that they might stand in the court of the king. Now, the king's meat was meat that no doubt was sacrificed to his pagan gods. In those days, a person, whenever they butchered a lamb or a cow or whatever, they would usually offer it as a sacrifice to their gods. And then they would go ahead and eat it themselves. In other words, you sort of roast it, and you take the fat and burn it unto the gods, but it was offered as an oblation or a sacrifice to the gods, and then you ate it. Daniel did not want to have any part of eating meat that had been sacrificed to pagan deities, and so he requested that he be freed from this particular portion that the king offered in a few moments. But that's to give you the reason why Daniel did not want to eat the king's meat. Now from the children of Judah there was Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. In the Hebrew, these are actually beautiful names. All of them relate to God. Daniel means God is judge. Hananiah is beloved of the Lord. What a beautiful name, Hananiah. I love that name. Mishael, who is as God. And Azariah, the Lord is my help. And so they have beautiful names, all relating in some way to the Lord. But the prince of the eunuchs gave them Babylonian names that all related to the Babylonian deities. And so to Daniel he gave the name of Belteshazzar, which means Bel's prince. Bel was one of the gods of the Babylonians. To Hananiah he gave the name of Shadrach. And Shadrach means illumined by the sun god. To Mishael he gave the name of Meshach, which means who is like Shach. Shak was another one of the Babylonian deities. And to Azariah he gave the name Abednego, which means the servant of Nego, which was another one of the Babylonian deities. So Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, Belteshazzar, these are all the profane names that were given to them by the eunuch in Babylon as they took away from them their Hebrew names which related to God. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Daniel did not want to defile himself with this meat offered to pagan deities, with the wine, and so he requested that he not have to eat it. Now God had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. And the prince of the eunuchs said unto Daniel, I fear the Lord the king, who has appointed your meat and your drink. For why should he see your faces worse liking than the children which are of your sort? Then shall you make me in danger of my head before the king. Now look, Daniel, I am fearful of the king. I respect him. And he gave me command to feed you this stuff. And if you don't eat this and you guys get thin and skinny, and then my head is in danger, because I'm the one in charge of making sure that you're strong and healthy when you come to stand before him. Then said Daniel to Melzar, who was the chief of the prince of the eunuchs, and he said, let's just have a testing period for 10 days. Let them give us pulse, which is a grain cereal to eat, and water to drink. Then let our countenances be looked upon before thee, and the countenance of the children that eat the portion of the king's meat. And as you see, deal with your servants. So he consented to this matter, and for 10 days, and at the end of the 10 days, their countenances, that is Daniel and his friends, appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all of the children which did eat the portion of the king's meat. So Melzar took away the portion of their meat and the wine that they should drink, and they were able to eat the grains, the vegetables. Thus Melzar, and for these 4 children, God gave them knowledge and skill in all of the learning and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. Now at the end of the days, that is the 3 years that they were in this training period, the king had said that they should bring them in, and then the prince of the eunuchs brought them before Nebuchadnezzar, and the king communed with them, and among them all none was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, that stood before the king, and therefore they were brought to stand before him. And in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all of his magicians and astrologers that were in all of his realm. And Daniel continued through the entire reign of Nebuchadnezzar and his grandson Belshazzar, and even into the first year of King Cyrus, so on through the reign of Darius and King Cyrus. Now in the 2nd year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep was taken from him. Then the king commanded to call the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans to show the king his dream. So they came and they stood before the king. And the king said unto them, I've dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. So the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Syriac, and so part of this book is written, and in fact at this point, from chapter 2 verse 4 on to chapter 7 verse 28, this book is written, because it says they spoke to him in Syriac. The book is written in this language of Aramaic, which was the ancient Syrian language. O king, live forever. Tell thy servants the dream, and we will show you the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, I have forgotten it. If you will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretation, you'll be cut to pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill. But if you show the dream and the interpretation thereof, ye shall receive from me gifts, rewards, great honor. Therefore show me the dream and the interpretation. They answered again and said, let the king just tell the servants his dream, and we will show you the interpretation. And the king answered and said, I know of certainty that you would gain the time, because you see that I have forgotten the dream. But if you will not make known unto me the dream, there is but one decree for you. For you have prepared lying and corrupt words to speak before me, till the time be changed. Therefore tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can show me the interpretation thereof. And the Chaldeans answered before the king and said, look, there's not a man on the earth that can show the king's matter. Therefore there is no king, lord, nor ruler that has asked such things of any of his magicians or astrologers or Chaldeans. Come on, king. Let's be fair. No man knows what a man dreams. No man can show you this. Look in history. No king has ever demanded such a ridiculous thing from his counselors. So he was very furious. He ordered the execution of his wise men, and Daniel answered with the counsel and wisdom to Arioch, who was the captain of the king's guard, who was commissioned to go out and to slay all of the wise men. And he said to Arioch, why is the decree so hasty from the king? Then Arioch made the thing known to Daniel. And Daniel went in, and he desired of the king that he would give him a little time. Then he promised to show the king the interpretation. Then Daniel went to his house and made the thing known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they would desire mercies of God, of the God of heaven, concerning this secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. So Daniel went into the king and he said, look, give me a little time. I'll come and I'll tell you the dream and the interpretation. Then he went to his buddies and said, hey, it's time for a prayer meeting, fellas. We got to get some information, our necks are on the line. Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Now, it is, I think, important to the story and for us to know that Daniel, at this point, was probably around 19 or 20 years of age. He was probably around 16 years old when he was carried as a captive to Babylon. Just a very young man. Just a very young man when he purposed in his heart he wasn't going to defile himself with the king's meat. It shows that somewhere along the line, Daniel had excellent training in the ways of God and in the things of God. And the depth of his spiritual character is expressed here after God reveals to him the dream and the interpretation. As we read Daniel's response to God and realize here's just a young man in a far country, but he shows such depth of spiritual character. Daniel answered the Lord and said, blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom unto the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding. He reveals the deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him. I thank thee and praise thee, O thou God of my fathers, who hast given me wisdom and might, and hast made known unto me now what we desired of thee, for you have now made known unto us the king's matter. And this to me is just a marvelous expression of praise and thanksgiving unto God, which shows a real depth of spiritual character in such a young man. Therefore Daniel went in unto Arioch, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said thus unto him, Destroy not the wise men of Babylon, bring me in before the king, and I will show unto the king the interpretation. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste, and said unto him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah that will make known unto the king the interpretation. The king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, Art thou able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen, and the interpretation thereof? And Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, The secret which the king has demanded cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers show unto the king. But there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets, and makes known unto the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Thy dream and thy visions of thy head upon thy bed are these. Now, first of all, make note that Daniel does not take personal credit for the interpreting of the dream. I think that this is something that if anyone is at all interested in becoming involved in the work of the Lord, it is important to note this particular aspect of Daniel. That he was not about to take credit for what God had done. He immediately points to God as the source, and he gives credit to God. He does not let the king give him credit or give him honor, but he points the king to God. There's a God in heaven who reveals things, and he has made known. Secondly, the dream is for the latter days. So it is a dream that has prophetic significance. The things that are going to come to pass here on the earth. But as for me, now notice he's not taking credit. As for me, this secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than anyone else, but for their sakes that shall make known the interpretation to the king, that you may know the thoughts of your heart. God didn't do this for me because I'm something special, or because I have anything over anybody else. He's not trying to exalt himself in this at all. He does seek to exalt God, but not seeking to promote or exalt himself. And so important for anyone involved in any kind of ministry, not to try to exalt yourself, but to just seek to bring glory to God. Now, he tells the king what he dreamed. But notice, he said, Thou, O king, saw and behold a great image. And this image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was awesome. So you saw this great image, awesome, bright. The image head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part iron and part of clay. And you were watching till a stone was cut without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and broke them in pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. So this was the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had that troubled him.